G'day everyone. I'm Crystal. I'm going to be moderating this rank and file first candidates AMA. Okay. It's good to see so many people watching. Okay. I thought before we got into the questions that we could let the candidates introduce themselves, and we'll go clockwise, starting with Dave, and work our way around. Okay, if that's all right with everyone. Okay, so Dave, who are you?
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for setting this up and putting in your time to be the moderator. I'm Dave Hauser. I am a guard at Newcastle Interchange. I've been a guard for 15 years in the railways, and I'm currently the Vice President of the Operations Division. But I'm seeking endorsement to become the Secretary of the New South Wales branch.
And Alan, who are you?
Hi, I'm Alan van der Horn, North Sydney Guard. I'm seeking endorsement for the Secretary of the Ops Division. I've been in the railways for about 17 years, started as a CSA. I've been a guard for about probably 6-7 years. And also thank you for Crystal for setting this whole streaming up. And yeah, that's me.
Hi all, I'm Chris Salisbury. A lot of you will hopefully know me. I'm currently the Vice President of the Guards Subdivision. On this occasion though, I'm running for a national position to become a delegate from the New South Wales branch to the National Council. I am asking for your support, but I'm also asking for the support of all rank and file first candidates, because it's never been a more important election in this union's history. And I'm hoping that we can get significant change in this union. Thank you.
Thank you. And Yusufona?
Yeah,
would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Crystal. Yusufona Filippo. I'm currently the Salary and Admin Secretary for that division. Been with the rail for about 22 years. Started off as a CSA like Alan also, and sort of just come up along the ranks. Yep, I'll be running for the same position as well, the branch council as well for the salary and admin.
Excellent. Okay. Now we have a whole bunch of questions that have come in throughout the week. Okay. And let's start with the subject of experience, because questions came up about that a lot. Okay. Let's start with, why should we vote for you to run our union? Is one question that came up. Okay, so Dave, why should we vote for you? As compared to, well, you're only running against Alex, the secretary. So why are you better than Alex?
Well, I'd like to say that I would like the delegates to have more empowerment, better training and support. We're all delegates in rank and file first, but we're not happy with what's going on. So I would like to see proper training, upskilling of all the delegates across all divisions and uniting them together. And I think that I can do that if I have the opportunity to be the secretary of the union. Because at the moment, I haven't received any training as a delegate for 4 years. And the last training I did, I believe, was due to an audit from the Registered Organisations Commission. And it was the same training I did about 12 years ago. So it didn't really give me any more skills than what I already had. And I think we can't have a union where our delegates, our frontline defence, have not got the skills in which to combat management.
Would anyone else like to weigh in why they're...
Well, I mean, they've addressed the issue of experience. I mean, the 4 people, and also yourself, Crystal, as well, 5 of us, have considerable experience as delegates and as senior as delegates at that on very major projects. So the argument about experience is a bit of a furphy, really. We've got experience. We're ready to go from day one, and we've got a program and a platform which will deliver far better results for our members than has currently been delivered. We just only have to look at the current EA, which is now dragged on into its 19th month of a wage freeze. We only have to look at the bungled strategies from this union leadership, the actions that have been pulled for no reason, and in the dead of night, to know that we really do deserve better. If we have got the experience, we've got a program, and we will take decisive action. And that's why we need to be, as a team, elected.
Yeah, just to comment on what Chris says, I think we need, to what Chris and Dave has said, the experience we have is grassroots experience. We've been dealing with issues on the front line with frontline staff, and what we need to do in me standing for Secretary of the Operations, I think I would like to have a more unified system where the divisions can come together and actually address problems that are similar, and we can all brainstorm and get the desired results or decide which route to take. At the moment, I don't think there's that inclusiveness of everybody with the current incumbents. I think a lot of people are being left out of decision making. And I think if elected, I think that will change.
Excellent. Okay, I'll move on to the next question, okay, which is, okay, now this one's specifically for Dave, I think. I'm not sure if anyone else was an IBR in the EA, but as an independent bargaining representative in the EA, what claims did you put forward and were any accepted?
Well, I nominated as an independent bargaining representative because the way the delegates were selected was very opaque. There was no real process that I saw, and I asked Toby Warnes about that at the time, and he said, "Oh, the delegates were selected, blah blah blah." There was a bit of, it was really cloudy. So I put my hand up, and I thought I did it because I thought that it would upset the current officials, because they obviously didn't want me in the room. And I go back to the last enterprise agreement. We had conferences of 200 delegates, and there was a vote taken for 4% per annum, endorsed unanimously by the room at the Trades Hall. I think it was in January 2018. And it was completely ignored by our current Secretary, Unions New South Wales, and the management, of course. And the offer was put forward and it barely scraped through. So I thought this time around I'll put my hand up. Now, I did put one claim up, and that was for the guard to control the doors on the NIF. And that was quite early in the piece. I was released from roster to attend about 6 or 8 meetings. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they were very disjointed. There were IBRs would meet first, and then the union would meet with the management, and virtually nothing was done for at least 6 months. And then there was a direction from the union to withdraw because they didn't want me there. So I did that. I was given that probably in December last year. So none of the claims were accepted, and I'd probably I'd say that I was probably treated as a novelty guest by the management at best.
Okay. So to follow on for that, okay, this is just me asking a question because I can see it.
Yep.
It's going to come up. What, as secretary, how would you approach it differently?
As secretary, I would have what we had last time, the delegates conferences. There were 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly how many, but it's a good place for the conferences where people could share ideas. I met guys and girls from other divisions that I didn't know before, and we discussed things in the breaks. You know, it's a good networking sort of situation. It brings the union together, and I would say that that's the number one thing we can forge a way forward is because then the delegates can go back into the workplace and talk to their members. At the moment, it's all coming out via email. It's very disjointed. You don't seem to know. No one really knows what's agreed and what's not. And I think it's a lot better if we have people in the room. And obviously that was an expense to the management because getting 200 people off the roster is quite expensive. But you know what? If they want to play, they've got to pay. That's the way I look at it. And I definitely think that that's the way to go forward. And that's what I would encourage to be done as secretary.
Excellent. Okay. Was anyone else in IBR? I doubt it. No.
I wasn't an IBR, but I can fully understand Dave's position in this. The first mistake in this EA was over the non-selection of very, very senior delegates in the EA bargaining committee. That was the first mistake, and it was a massive mistake. So what you've got is a series of captain's picks. The only good thing about it is that Dave and I don't share the responsibility for all of the mistakes that have been made, and there've been a lot of mistakes.
Okay. Kind of off topic here. I was talking to a rep from the CSAs the other day, and he said that in this election, not the one that we're in now, like in the second round or the third round, they're actually going to vote for who's going to be the EBA reps. Okay, for next time. Well, that's what he said. Because I'm like, this is all captain's picks, and he's like, no, we vote for it. I'm like, no, we don't. And he's like, well, we're voting for it this time. Okay, so let's see if that actually happens, because that's a good idea if it's true.
Well, I would think that the executive of each division would be the immediate automatic picks. So your president, your vice president, and your secretary of each division should immediately be picks. And then after that, each division should decide. I think they should decide. They get so many. We work out how many seats get to the table, and then we just say that's it. Of course, the management will try and trim that down to a peak bargaining committee, blah, blah, and that's fine. I understand you can't have 200 people at the table, but at least all the delegates to the conference should be selected by the members, because then you have complete integrity and trust in what's going on. At the moment, it's all over the place.
Well, I had this idea years ago. Okay, why don't we live stream it?
Sorry.
Just like we're doing this right now.
Question.
Okay, people can just watch. Okay.
Just to follow on to what Dave just said, I mean, that was something I raised at our subdivision. And how did we get these so-called EA delegates? And one of the stories was, they were elected. I said, by who? And then it changed to, no, there was an expression of interest put out. And I thought, what's going on here? And I fully agree. This should be open and transparent. People, the delegates should elect who they want in these EA meetings, and nobody else should be doing it. And it should be done.
And we should at least know what's been agreed to and what hasn't. Come on.
Yes, and therefore you get rid of this captain's pick, and I think the lack of transparency and inclusiveness of delegates, it's been showing up really, really badly during this enterprise agreement.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is, sorry.
Sorry. Let me finish. We're getting, emails saying, we want to do a Zoom call. Yeah. I work late afternoons. Every time there's a Zoom call, it's probably just about when I'm getting up. But yet there's no email or any briefing to follow after that Zoom call. I've asked them that too. Somehow or other they don't want to. I don't know what. There's just this, almost like the secret society that goes on in this organization. And, it just gets to you, because when members talk to you, you got nothing. Because you haven't been given anything.
Well, I think to answer Crystal's specific question, I've got no problem with live streaming, but this union management administration does have a problem with live streaming, and as it has a problem with transparency. Now, Alex Klassen's made a mea culpa video in which he apologised for the pulling for the way in which the signalist action was pulled. That is the lack of transparency around that. But since then, nothing's improved. We're getting actions that are pulled and then told we're getting text messages on Friday night and Saturday that the action's off. This is crazy stuff. I mean, we're going to criticise for our lack of experience. We certainly can't be criticised for that, but we can't be criticised also for lack of transparency. That's why we're all here today facing you.
Yeah.
Okay, this question, yeah, I'm just going to read it because it came in. Okay, so I'm going to ask it. Okay, if you are unhappy with RTBU leadership, why not just start a different union?
Can I take this one, Dave?
Yeah, no worries, mate.
I think that's easier said than done. But as my comment to this is that we're unhappy with the current leadership. That's why we're making the effort to oppose them at this election. We could just walk away from it, but we're unhappy, so we're doing something about it. That's the bottom line.
I think there's another aspect to this. There's an example of a breakaway union in the shop retail area called Retail and Fast Food Workers Union. I've actually spoken with Josh Cullinan, who's their secretary, and he was very fortunate setting up his union in opposition to the SDA. Now, for those that don't know, the SDA cut a lot of deals with McDonald's, KFC, Woolworths, Coles, Bunnings, the big corporations, and it cost workers in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But the RAFU, or Retail and Fast Food Workers Union, went out and challenged those enterprise agreements. I think they started doing it in 2016, and they had some success in repealing them because they failed the boot test, or the better off overall test, which is part of the Fair Work legislation. Having said all that, they are now being vilified because the boot test is under attack in this new legislation that's being proposed by the ACTU. And that's because the Business Council of Australia doesn't like it and they demonise it. So RAFU's done a lot of good work, but the process to set that union up was very hard. And I think in the retail sector, they're in a lot worse shape than what we are. We haven't got that bad yet in regards to service to the members. And this is the opportunity we have, the democratic process every 4 years, to put our hands up and have a go, you know. And I've done that the last 2 elections and stood for Vice President of the Guards subdivision and then Vice President of Ops. And now I think I'm ready. And I think it's necessary that we have change. So starting another union, I think it makes it very easy for the boss to divide 2 groups of workers against each other. And you know, I don't see that as a viable option because in the retail area, there's a lot more workers and a lot more employees across Australia, whereas in the rail industry, we've got, I think, 13,000 members in New South Wales. I'm not sure what the totals are nationally, but I think that we would be probably fighting a very big uphill battle to get anywhere. Whereas it's a much better way of doing business to actually stand for office in the RTBU and have some change.
Also say we're stronger together.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we wanted one EA, okay, and it's because we're stronger, we're better off together than apart. Okay. Did anyone else want to weigh in? I'm guessing not because it's yeah. Okay. The next one is do you have any response to the smear campaigns against Rank and File First, or Dave specifically? Okay, there's been 2 that I've seen. Okay, one was signed, one wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Any response?
Well, look, the first one wasn't signed, and there was glaring inaccuracies in it, you know. And I'd say whoever authored it was desperate to attack me, but you know, they're commonly referred to as shit sheets. And unless you're going to put your name to them, they don't really matter. I'm not too concerned with it. Actually, I had a lot of people come up to me and say, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, it's not a worry." A lot of people said, and everyone said the same thing. It reeks of desperation. So that was good. The second one, I've only just I had a quick look at it, and I understand Alan Barden's the author of it. Alan used to be a national official. I'm guessing that he's retired. I haven't seen a physical copy of it, so I'm not too worried about it because you know I stand by what I do and what I say, and I've been out campaigning and talking to people on stations, in depots, Tomorrow I'm going down to meet some infrastructure workers in Sydney on the day off. I'm quite happy to keep going around talking and listening to people. And that's the big thing. I found the members just want someone to listen to them because no one's listened to them at head office. And that's a fundamental thing. You don't know what the problems are with the members if you don't listen to them. We've got a situation at the moment where people are telling us how good it's going to be and this is the best you're going to get. And that's just the way of the world. I don't accept that, because if I have 12,000 members screaming at me that you're wrong, I'm a bit of an idiot if I'm not going to listen to them. So I'm not too worried about those smears. You know, you judge by your actions, I believe, and actions mean a lot.
Yeah,
Well,
and on that. No, sorry, Chris.
Look, some of the suggestions were just ludicrous. That the management somehow put Dave up to running as an ABR or whatever. Dave Hauser brought the whole network to its knees over the first aid dispute. He stopped all the trains at Newcastle for a whole weekend because people weren't qualified in first aid. This is not a person who colludes with management. This is a person who management respect, perhaps, and also fear.
Yeah, they definitely don't like me.
If you go down the line of if going back to that first question about the experience, if this is what you call experience, taking cheap shots at people, then yeah, that's a bit of a question mark over the experience. I think they haven't experienced a concerted effort to get rid of them, so now they're all over the shop, and the best way to do things is to badmouth people and say we're the best. But as Dave said, there's no backing what they're saying. And they're the incumbents, so they need to. If they say they're the best at doing things, then please tell us what's your future plans.
Can I say, okay, I know I'm a moderator here, so I shouldn't really be weighing in, but I'm going to weigh in anyway. In the one by the one that was signed, the one that came out yesterday, I think, they said that the current team are the only people with the experience to do the job. No one else is qualified. That's actually a bad sign on them. Shouldn't they have? What happens if, like, knock on wood, I don't want this to happen, but if Alex had a heart attack tomorrow, if no one else is qualified, someone should be ready to take over, even if you don't, like, as a backup. There should always be a backup, in my opinion. Okay.
Crystal, can I answer that? Because on my point about delegates training, that's how you identify people who are future possible leaders of the union. If you train every delegate up to the eyeballs and give them all the skills and support, which is the main thing, support to go forward and do the best for the members, you'll naturally find who's a leader in that out of all those delegates, and they will then run for office position in the next election, and then they can coordinate at a high level. And it's naturally you progress up the ladder, more or less, And I think that's exactly what should happen, because you want people that are going to go and do the right thing by the members. So if I become the secretary, I want every official trained to the eyeballs with all the modern technology like this live streaming stuff. This is awesome. It's the first time I've done it, but I was thinking before, how good would it be to have a stop work meeting, and for those that couldn't attend because they're either on leave, overseas, whatever, or on shift work, that they could tune in and participate, ask questions, put up comments, whatever. That's what I want. We're in the 21st century. We've got this wonderful technology. The pandemic sort of brought it on a bit, with Zoom and whatnot, Microsoft Teams. It's awesome. And why can't we get people trained up so that everyone's completely skilled to the eyeballs? And then it doesn't matter if I have a heart attack, while I'm in hospital, the assistant secretary will take over, because he's almost as well skilled as I am, if not, on the same par. And that's what we want. We want strong unionism.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. And on that point of technology again, this was brought up, oh God, when I was the secretary of the CSAs. We brought up this thing about technology, using emails, using, to contact people. And up till today, we're still that behind in that union office on technology.
Mm.
You know, the best they can come up is with a Zoom. And it's just they've never come back into the 21st century. It seems like they still got, you know, both their feet firmly planted in the Jurassic era. And yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, look, the other aspect of this experience is that it's been a bad experience. Their experience, our experiences are now a 19th month wage freeze. We have no agreement on the NIF. We have backwards communications coming from the office, and we have a lot of disharmony within the membership because of their experience. We can do better, and we are experienced, and we will do better.
Okay, now I've got the next subject, which is future plans if elected. Okay, this is separate to promises, okay, which is another category. Okay, oops, I've already asked that one. Okay, is there anything specific that you plan to do for freight drivers, cleaners, and office staff? Okay.
Well, I've yet to speak with some freight drivers, unfortunately. I only know one in Sydney, and he's been on leave. But for the cleaners and office staff, I think the big issue I've noticed when I've travelled around was cleaners contractors. I couldn't believe that St Leonard's and Chatswood stations are cleaned by contractors. And to me, that's their jobs that should be RTBU, Sydney Trains employees and members of our union. So I think that needs to be really have the microscope put over it. Also, office staff. I'm going to Burwood on Friday next week to have a chat with office staff. So I'm looking forward to hearing what their issues are. I talk with the admin people at Newcastle, and I've talked to the infrastructure admin people at Newcastle or Hamilton, and they have issues of representation. So I think getting the delegates roster filled, I noticed there's quite a number of places where there's no delegate. I actually pushed to get more station staff recognised under the rules on the north, and it fell on deaf ears because we've got one person who represents all the station staff from Scone and Dungog down to Cowan, and I think that needs to change massively. I believe there's 3 points that need to be covered there: Newcastle, Maitland, and Gosford, and that way the broader area is represented by 3 people. Obviously, the delegates roster needs to be filled in. And as to freight drivers, I'm happy to hear whatever their issues are. If anyone can get in contact with me through the Facebook page, that'd be great, because I'd like to find out what their issues are. I imagine that there'd be issues like everywhere. You know, the management of every company is hostile towards the employers, and we need to turn that around with a bit more of a pushback from the membership and the delegate structure.
User Pharaoh, do you have anything to add? You're on mute, so if you want to add anything, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Just in regards to the question, thank you for whoever gave that question.
You like the T-shirt?
In the last 4 years that I've been secretary for the salary and admin, it's been a real journey to try and obtain actual the listing of the members that are from my division, and it was a real challenge. But I finally did after being in the role for 2.5 years, mind you. I sent out a survey to get some feedback from all the members, and it's pretty clear that the office staff are a bit of a different kettle of fish. We're more working. Most of us work closely with management, so there's a different approach. And the feedback I was getting was that people didn't want Zoom; they wanted visibility of delegates and representation that they weren't getting. They didn't know who the delegate was, and I'd like to see Michael Marsland and I do get elected into this role, that we'll be able to provide more of a person that they can contact and get the support that they need. If anything, our division had 7 organisers, and 4 years. So if that's any question to how the office is working with trying to get an organizer that will help us progress forward to be able to do what it is that we were elected to do, I would feel that our hands wouldn't be tied by then and would be free to not only receive the training like what David's been talking about. We really need training. We don't sit on our high horse. We know everything, but we do have an open book for wanting to learn more about rules and the whole unionized movement. But that can pick up along the way, which I have done. So I was an elected delegate for salary 8 years prior to doing this role. So it's not like you'd immediately just walk into the top of the pile, as Dave has explained in his experience also. But yeah, back office is definitely a neglected area. Lots of potential. So I'd love to see if I get re-elected to as well with Michael Marsland. We're really keen to get some support from them that they deserve. 7 organisers in 4 years, but hired help that would be to organise.
Thank you. Okay. I had a different question lined up first, but I'm going to switch it around a little. How do you plan to increase RTBU membership, especially in the work groups with lower percentage of members, such as office staff, or with work groups split between multiple unions, such as CSAs and like TCAC staff?
Right. Well, I suppose there's a lot of people that have left the union because they're disappointed. So I would ask that they don't all rejoin for starters. And I think with a change of leadership and an election platform that shows that we mean business, I think there'll be naturally people come back to the union. But that goes back to my point about organisers being out in the workplace. Like currently, I've just signed up 2 CSAs on the north, one at Gosford and one at on the Hunter line, because they'd never been approached by the union to join. And I think that may have, the girl at Gosford told me that they didn't do a physical course at Petersham, where they usually captured, because of the pandemic. So she was quite happy to join her partner as a driver in Sydney somewhere. I didn't exactly remember where, but she was stoked that I had it. And I was lucky I was carrying around a membership form, and I gave it to her and said, sign that, send it off to head office, and you'll get your membership card, etc. So I think we need to go out and get delegates and organisers mobile in the workplace and do an audit and find out who's not in the union, see if they want to join, tell them that there's a new management team in control of the union and we want to do better. Because let's face it, industrially, you've got to have close to, if not 100%, to be effective if you're going to take industrial action. There's several people not in the union who don't know what to do if there's industrial action, because they're not part of the union. They're concerned that they may get some sort of action taken against them. And I've tried to convince as many as possible to come back into the union. I've been successful with a couple. But that's the job of a full-time organiser. It needs to be more outreach to people who aren't in the union. But obviously, starting at Petersham College, there should be a recruitment officer going there every time there's a new class of station staff, cleaners, guards, drivers, whatever capacity they're going to be employed in. They should be captured at the college. And I know in the past there was no real ownership of that. And we may have to look at a recruitment officer for that position.
Yeah, just to second you on that, Dave, the thing is, coming from stations, the apathy towards this union was really, really bad. And I think if we change the mindset to show that there's people out there and there's people that if you send an email or you call, that somebody's going to respond to it. And all attempts are going to be made to help you. Once the word gets out on that, I think people will start coming back to the union, because I think Dave will back me on this. The biggest gripe you have out there is the lack of getting a response from the union, seeing a union official rock up there. And as I said, we go back to the technology. I mean, if you needed to speak to that member, you could have put him on Zoom, put him on whatever, and have a chat with him. What's it going to cost you? 5 minutes of your time? You don't even have to send that person an email. Just, ask him when he's available, and you have a 5-minute chat with him. And at least you've got the story. But this just ignoring things, ignoring emails, ignoring phone calls, what does that say about the incumbents? We taking people for granted here, or what? If you're not gonna, I mean, it doesn't matter how big or small the problem is. The thing is just showing people that you're there. You're gonna check it out for them. You're gonna have a look into it. You're gonna speak to people and get back to them. I don't see what's so hard about that. But
I agree, Alan. And
the current incumbents, they've ignored this whole simple customer service process.
I get that a lot. The last 3 or 4 weeks I've been out touring and talking to people. A lot of people have commented, you're the first union rep we've seen in 10, 12, 15. One guy said 15 years. And he said, I'm going to vote for you just because you turned up. And I think, that's great that he's going to vote for me because I turned up. But I said, here's my policies anyway. It's a sad state of affairs that, you're going to vote for someone blind, more or less, not sure what I'm all about just because I turned up. So I would like to change that. And I think it's not a big ask to get officials to go out and talk to their members in the workplace. It shouldn't happen once every 4 years. It should happen consistently because then you get a feel for what's going on in the job. You get a feel for how the membership are feeling about an issue. Consultation. It's basically consultation, going out and talk to people. It's not hard to do. I've actually sat with some people on this tour and listened to them for 2 hours. And they were stoked that someone actually would spend that time with them. And I think it's not a big issue to do that and shows that you care. And I think that there's a sort of culture at the moment where you only see a union official very rarely. I can't remember the last time I saw an organiser up here in Newcastle, except for a NIF show. It's been a long time, and that needs to change. We need to be better than that. People are putting in, $600 or $800 a year to be a member of this union. They deserve better at service, I believe.
Yeah, Dave, that's what I believe.
Well, if we get in,
kind of touched on this earlier. Yeah, Alan kind of touched on this earlier. But what role do you see yourself playing in keeping the RTBU united, as in different divisions working together?
Well, I think if I'm the secretary, I've got to be the unifier. That's the job, to coordinate all the divisions together. Obviously, training would be a good thing to have a mix of people from each division in the training. So the delegate structure training, and that's where you get to meet people. I really enjoyed the delegates conferences, the last enterprise agreement, because I got to meet people that I not normally would come into contact with. Infrastructure workers, transit officers, signallers. Very fortunate to meet signallers last time around because, you never see a signaller. You only ever talk to them on the phone in operational situations. So I think that is vital to get people to know because then people can talk amongst themselves in their own time and say, hey, what's going on over there? What can we do to help? Even just talking anecdotally about issues that they've had on the job. Why is it done this way? Because understanding each other's job gives you empathy for what's going on. And that, I think, when I started on the railways in 2007, there was a lot of blaming the signaller, blaming the station staff, blaming the driver, blaming the guard. It was just a cultural thing that I didn't understand because I'd never worked in an environment like that before. And I think we should be, as a union, trying to get people together to have empathy for each other because we're all united here to do one thing, come to work, put a roof over our head, feed our families, etc. And we have a common enemy at the boss, that we need to be stop looking at each other as if we might be competing, so to speak. We should be looking at helping each other, you know, as much as possible. And that's not an easy thing to get off the ground. It won't be fixed overnight, and nothing is. You know, it takes perseverance and a vision to get things together and get people together. But you know, it's just like when we go to May Day marches, we've got people from all walks of life, but we're all workers, we're all members of unions. So I see it very similar to that we just got to get together and bring people together and get commonalities. And delegate training, I think, would be a great step forward in that regard.
Anyone else want to add in, or should I go to the next question?
Well, just that the RTBU current officials in power call themselves the Unity Group, and I would say that the only thing that they're really united about is their own self-preservation. They are not bringing the union together. They're excluding delegates. They're excluding whole divisions in some cases. The lack of representation, or proper representation of station staff and also the office workers that USAFONA represents is disgraceful. So we've just got to do we've got to do better. Dave will do better. He'll get all the delegates together straight away, and we'll become one union.
Okay, I'm going to skip the next question because I wrote it. Okay, because Alex just asked something very, very similar. Okay, to the question that I had. Okay, which was about dealing with unions New South Wales. This is, how will you leverage the power of the RTBU to stand with other public service unions to fight the disgraceful New South Wales public service wage gap?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. It's something that I've put out on my literature, that I, as the secretary, get a seat on the board of Unions New South Wales. And I would be advocating strongly to unite with other government employees, the teachers, the nurses, the firefighters, the paramedics, the administration staff, all of them. I believe there's 140,000 members of unions that work for the state government, and New South Wales state government's the biggest employer in the country, you know, and Peritet has no regard for them whatsoever. So I'm very disappointed in the behaviour of Unions New South Wales so far, because the discoordinated strikes, you know, could be all coordinated, maybe into a mass movement, you know. And I think, to Alex's point on the disgraceful New South Wales public service wage cap, it was brought in by Michael Costa, I believe, back in about 2005, maybe. I might have to be corrected on that, but it was made law by Barry O'Farrell, I think, in 2012. And that law should have been challenged because it's a restraint of trade, you know, and to have a law that dictates how much money you can earn as a cap. What if inflation goes beyond 8%, as it's tipped to at the end of the year, you know? If we've still got a public service cap that's, I believe, now at 3%, unless you give up some of your hard-fought conditions, then that should be challenged in court, I believe. And I'm a bit disappointed that Unions New South Wales has never gone down that path. Obviously, you know, you have to work in with other unions, and maybe there's some difference of opinions or whatever, but I believe it's something that should be challenged in court. And if you beat it, and that's great, because then all workers will benefit. Because if we get some, let's say hypothetically, we get a inflation-based wage outcome, right? That puts the public service in a position where it's better to have a public service job than it is to be in the private sector. So at a time when there's low unemployment, which is we're at 3.5%, I believe now, that pushes the private sector to compete. So they have to lift wages in the private sector. Otherwise, people are going to go for government jobs and leave them short-handed. So I think it's a win for all workers, regardless if they're in a union or not.
I've got a little fact to add, okay, and a lot of people don't know this, but historically speaking, like over like the last 150 years, when railway workers have got a pay rise, everyone else in the country has. Okay, so railway workers set the standard for public service in like their state. So Sydney Trains, New South Wales Trains, State Rail, Rail Corp, all that. set the standard for all public service jobs in New South Wales. Then the public service sets the standard for the private industry. Okay, so if we don't get the pay rise, no one does, pretty much. It lowers it everywhere. That's why they have this pay cap, because their donors don't want to pay their employees more.
Well, that's always been my consideration. And I've had that conversation with quite a few members in regards to that, because you got to remember Peritet represents the business lobby, right? His only concern is the business lobby, and you can bet your bottom dollar they've been in his ear. Don't you dare agree to a bloody wage rise with them, nurses, doctors, whatever, paramedics, railway workers. You know, that there'd be plenty of phone calls going on there, I'd suspect. You know, saying, you know, our bread's buttered on this side of the fence. You know, so it's our duty, if you know what you said is right, Crystal, as leaders, the vanguard of the New South Wales union movement, so to speak. And I don't want to sound a bit conceited in regards to that, but if that's the case, then it's our duty to go into bat and get our members a good result. Because like, you look at what's going on, it's 7.3% inflation, interest rates have gone up 2%. You know, fuel's going through the roof because of the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis, and they're tipping power prices to be increasing between 20 and 30% next year. So when you got all four of those factors pushing on you, you know, I fear for a lot of people that have, you know, suffer mortgage stress, especially in Sydney. And some of the people that I've talked to on the stations only work Monday to Friday, so they're not earning great amounts of money. So when you know, they have to go without in order just to keep a roof above their head. And I think it's high time that we advocated hard and strong that inflation needs to be matched. There's no argument there can be no argument from the business lobby, because every worker that gets a decent pay rise then has disposable income and can go out and have enjoyment in life, go to a restaurant, take their kids to the cinema, go away for a holiday in a regional part of New South Wales or Australia. That benefits the economy wholesale. If every worker, it doesn't benefit the economy when rich people store money in the Cayman Islands at all. Every dollar spent in an economy, in the domestic economy, goes around 7 times, and that's most important. And most people would be, you know, participating in the economy, and that's good for small businesses. It's even good for big businesses like Coles, Wesfarmers, Woolworths. They get a better go because people actually spend on stuff that they normally wouldn't buy. So I think it, you know, it's an honour if we get the opportunity to lead the charge. I'm a bit disappointed in what happened with the police union the other day, and I would have thought Unions New South Wales would have said, "Hang on a minute, we've got other unions who are trying to get a better deal. Let's stick together." So, but I'm not surprised.
Okay, I think I know the answer to this question, and let's ask everyone this question: do you support a general strike? So no trains, schools, hospitals until our demands are met.
Yes, I do.
So like 1917 again.
If that's what needs to be done, look, I see what's happening at the moment with all the teachers, hospital workers, nurses. It doesn't seem to have changed Peritet's position. So obviously we need to change up our methodology, you know, and if that's the case, and that obviously has to be a conversation had at the table in Unions New South Wales. Whether it's successful or not, I don't know. But I mean, what's happened so far is not getting the results, unfortunately. We have a very obstinate government. You know, we're on our 4th premier. The scandals that have piled up that bloody deep, you can't even see over them. So, you know, I believe wholeheartedly that that's an option.
Look, my opinion is that if we had this combination of, as you alluded to earlier, was that we get all these unions together and we do a general strike. But as leaders, our union should have had these little strikes all along, and I'm sure by now we would have had a better outcome than what we were looking at. Whether or not Peritet or Hazard or Tudor wanted it, we would have got it because people would have been pissed off with their politicians. If we had 4-hour stop working, I mean, the next question that I get asked now after this thing is, are we going to have a 4-hour stop meeting to tell the members what these what does this new government offer mean. No, nothing has been said about that. People are asking, why haven't we walked off the job yet? Well, we can't just, we can't make that decisions. The hierarchy of the union has to make that decisions. We've been saying we've been called terrorists. Tudor has called us everything under the sun. They have actually put our frontline staff, even as a duty of care, we should take them to safe work for this. They've put our frontline staff in danger of being assaulted, spat on, everything, because people can't get their trains. And the union has just put out the thing saying, oh, we don't like what you said. And, no, we should have said, you say one more word and we're out on strike. End of story. You tell those idiots there, Tudor, Elliot, Perrottet, one more stupid word out of you in the media about us, and we'll go on strike.
Actually, better idea.
You'll see how pissed off the public will be for you. But we've got the incumbents have this ideology that, we got to keep the passengers on side. Why? They don't like us as it is.
Well, I think that's a generalisation, Alan. I think your point that you made about duty of care, and you only have to look at the other week when the Sydney Yard flooded, and station staff at Strathfield had to withdraw from the platform because there was no information from the ROC, and people were getting abused. I mean, that's a culmination of a couple of things. The management of the railways is poor during a breakdown. There's also the protracted industrial action that has got us nowhere, but frustrated workers and the members of the public alike. So now there's a cultural turn on us where we've got people turning against us. But the management still have a duty of care under the law to provide us with a safe workplace. So that is something that the union should be prosecuting. Every time they call us terrorists or something like that, we should be off to safe work, like you said, saying that they're inciting violence against our members, and if they can't guarantee safety, then we'll withdraw them, and that will pull them. That will pull them in the line straight away, I believe.
That's exactly
my idea. Instead of striking, just put a pin on any frontline worker being okay. So for those who don't know, a pin is a provisional improvement notice, which is it's something only a HSR can do who's done training. Okay, and if something is so unsafe that it becomes a danger, okay, it doesn't have to be danger to life, just like danger to health and safety, you can put this this notice, it's called a PIN, and that means that you're not allowed to work in that area. Okay, so if we say if you make any more comments in these in this vein that demonizes the worker, we will put a pin on all stations that message was heard by. Okay, so if they make a statement on Sydney News, that's every station in Sydney gets a pin. If it makes the Newcastle News as well, then that's all of the Hunter as well, and you know what I mean. Okay, and then you still get paid.
And we use the regulation that we have. There's so many avenues we can go down. And it's there. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a pin. You can just cease the cessation of duties. People stop working, go home. If the public wants to
pin protection, okay, and it gets an investigation started by WorkSafe. Okay.
But I think on that day that Sydney Yard flooded, Michael Marsland, who's running for the president's position in the union, ended up withdrawing the staff off the platforms of Strathfield because it was a dangerous place. And some of the passengers said to him, you guys should go and get away from here, because people were frustrated. They weren't getting told anything. There was no communication. So when you get a situation like that, you've got to withdraw to a safe place. And luckily enough at Strathfield, they have control rooms where people can lock the doors and all that. I'd be very, very worried about places where those hubs are in, where there's no control room or safe place to withdraw. And this is a big issue going forward if we're going to take industrial action. We need to take industrial action that doesn't turn the general public and other workers against us, and that needs to be thought out properly, because what's happening at the moment is not working. Coupled with the management of the railways, which I think has deteriorated over since the split, I believe it's deteriorated. A recovery from disruptive incidents, be it a fatality, weather events, whatever, is absolutely atrocious. It just doesn't seem to get anywhere near. They don't transpose trains. They don't get people proper information. There doesn't seem to be any sort of direct management of the situation. It's just, oh, well, it'll be over in 12 hours when everyone goes home. And that's, to me, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the workers, and it's definitely not acceptable for the public.
We said it was going to go for an hour, but we're not even halfway through. Okay, so if anyone needs to bug out, you can bug out. But I know Dave said that he would like to stay as long as he can. Okay.
Yeah. We should answer all the questions as much as we can.
Okay. I think we just answered Alex's last question without even showing it. Okay. So I'm going to skip on to the next one. How do you plan to manage the requirements of the role you're running for, as well as your personal and family commitments?
Well, I suppose just like I do now with work, pretty much the same.
Okay. There was a couple of questions very similar. Okay, and I've amalgamated those questions. Okay.
Righto.
One referred to how you're on a flexible working arrangement at the moment.
Yeah, I am. I have a young son who's about to turn 10, and I share custody with his mother. She and I had a conversation before I nominated about what we would do, and she was supportive, which is good, because when we split, we weren't so amicable. But now we're in a civil position now, and we do what's in the best interests of our son. So she's understanding that as secretary, I suspect, in demand quite a bit, especially when there's enterprise agreements for various operators, and obviously with branch councils and meetings and whatnot. So she's fully understanding. We have custody orders, but we're a lot more flexible about how we do things now. So, which is good. It's good for at the end of the day, it's good for our son, and he's very happy that I'm running for office. As some people would have seen him at May Day, he's quite a militant trade unionist, even though he doesn't have a job.
Yes, he is. It's very judgmental too. So we walk past a homeless kid, and he's like, "Don't you want to help him?" I'm like, "I help a lot of people. I don't need to help every single homeless person I see." He's
got a very good heart. I think he gets that from me. He's very happy to help people, which I'm sort of. He's always been that way, and it's great. But I got trained by my parents to be trade unionists too, so I'm handing down that legacy, and it's important because I fear for the next generation because of a lot of automation and whatnot, and gig economy, etc. It's going to be hard for them, and I think if we can give them as much guidance as we can now into the future, it's going to be good for them.
Now, I don't think the other people on the panel, their time commitments will be that much different to the roles that they're asking for now. Okay, so we'll skip on to the next one. This one's specifically for Dave. Okay, as branch secretary, what do you view as all the different functions of the role?
Well, geez, it's a good question, actually. I know the
a
rules.
List in the union rules. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Crystal? I missed that.
There is a list in the union rules.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, and I have read that some time ago. They're clearly defined positions. Obviously, I have to adhere to the rules at all times because, if you stray from the rules, you're doing the wrong thing. And the rules are set out for a reason. So, obviously, I've got to manage the finances of the union as well, although I'm not sure. I remember them mentioning a finance committee before, but I'm not sure if that's now the branch executive. Chris might be able to tell us a bit more about that. Obviously, we've got to manage the subscriptions and the expenditure. The communications, all the press releases, that sort of stuff has to come through the secretary. But I'd like to take a collegiate position on a lot of stuff. I like to have input from everyone. I value everyone's opinion, even though I might not agree with it. I still value it. I don't believe in running the place like a dictator. I think that's going down the wrong path. Yeah, I'd just have to. I'd have to go by whatever the rules and the roles are in the rules.
I think Dave makes a really good point. There are some brilliant people in our group around Dave as well to support him in his role. I think that one potential criticism of Alex is that he does too much in terms of controlling other people and doesn't allow enough people enough room to use their creativity and imagination and to contribute to actually make a real contribution to the union. We're actually wasting talent at the moment, I believe, within our delegates' ranks. So I think Dave has touched upon that. Dave has mentioned the media. Dave will do all of those things, I think, very well, probably more capably than the current administration. I don't think it will be. It's a fast learning curve. And I think that I've been in the office and watched how they worked, and quite frankly, I think under Dave's leadership, it will be more functional than it currently is. And I think that he's got all the requirements to get the job. He's a good communicator. He's got heaps of experience. He understands a lot of the divisions, having worked on the stations as well as a guard and been involved in mixing with drivers, of course, as well, and now station staff and professionals. So he's got all of those skills. He won't talk himself up, but I think he's got all of the skills to fulfil that role. And I've watched that role at fairly close hand before being, with working in the office for the time that I was there. And I think that Dave will do everything that Alex does, but do it better.
Thanks for the endorsement, Chris.
Well, I think you're a bit humble. I think you've got a lot to offer, and that you're providing something that's going to be very, very different.
I'm under no illusions that there's a lot of work to be done. I'll obviously have to upskill myself. I'll need media training because the vampires of the media will be out there having a crack at us non-stop. But I want to defend my members as well. I want to prosecute our case, and I want to attack those in the media who would demonise rail workers as thugs and terrorists. But I'm under no illusions that there's a big jump up in skills required from me. I'm ready to go. I'm passionate about it. I'm really passionate about changing this union for the better, so that we get better outcomes for our members. I got that comment from a guard yesterday that I ran into at Gosford. He said, "There's no denying your passion, mate." I said, "Yeah, but passion won't get me across the line." It's a good starting point, but obviously, it's surrounding myself with good team members and entrusting people to do what's required of them. In rank and file first, we've got people that have certain skills. I'd have to tell you right now that I'm digitally hopeless, and I'm very happy that Crystal's lend a lot of hand to getting this off the ground today. We've also got Lyndall Moore, who's running for position as the Secretary of Central for Guards, who set up the website. I couldn't have done that. And honestly, they've done an exceptionally good job. I've actually had a friend of mine who's in the website game say that's a really good website. You've done really well. And that's all power to Lyndall and Crystal. It's got nothing to do with me because I'm hopeless at it. I couldn't even send a group email the other day because I didn't realise there was a limit on, and you can only send 400 a day. So I'm very frustrated. Obviously, there's a lot to learn, and I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to upskill myself to be the best that I can be in the role.
Okay, so we're changing to promises made, campaign commitments, stuff that you've said, pretty much. Okay. Okay. In your various Facebook posts, you refer to decisive industrial action. Please explain what that means, and given the nature of industrial relations in the current climate.
Well, I have to say personally, I'm very frustrated with what's gone on. Like last year, in October, I think it was the 23rd, we had planned a fortnight of overtime bans and whatnot, and I was looking forward to this because knowing full well the railways cannot run without overtime. and we got a text message on the Saturday afternoon. I think it was about 4 o'clock, saying the ban is lifted, and that's demoralising. So when I say decisive industrial action, that means if we're going to take action, we take it, whatever it is, whether it's a tiny ban or a walk-off. We don't buckle at the last minute, because nothing has been achieved by the removal of that overtime ban. Nothing has been achieved. Unfortunately for us, we've had a wage freeze for the last 18 months. And, you know, I would only take industrial action off the table once we've achieved something. So that's what I mean by decisive. It means that we go through with it. The Opal Breeders fiasco is unbelievable. You know, there may have been an opportunity for us to really damage the boss and hurt them where it hurts, and we just pulled it. You know, there was a PAB about it. There was all sorts of discussions about it, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and we still didn't do it. And that, to me, deflates the membership. It sort of demoralises them because we didn't go through with it. A lot of people said to me in my tours around the stations and the depots that I've been to, that they just feel like there's no end game, you know. And I think the only way to get any result is to go through with it. You can't make a threat to do something and not go through with it. And that needs to be 100% our commitment, is to take decisive industrial action to make sure we get what we need.
Yeah, look, going back to the Opal fiasco, as Dave correctly puts it, you know, I mean, they didn't include it in the original PAB, and they talked in one of their bulletins about a dirty tricks campaign by management. Well, it should have been in the first PAB if they're going to do it. Secondly, when they did introduce it, they introduced it, to everyone's surprise and dismay, with limited hours. In other words, they made it unworkable.
Yeah.
And they reckon we haven't got experience. Well, goodness, you know, that was a disaster. It's just opening station staff up to abuse. People going in the morning, don't have to use their Opal card. In the afternoon, they come home and they got to use it. You know, it was a really poorly planned action after a 2-week delay for a second PAB. I can understand why all of the members are very, very frustrated. And believe me, when we say we take decisive action, we take action that we can undertake. We don't make idle threats. What we threaten, we do and carry out.
And on that point, the thing is, the union had enough downtime to actually get the members' feeling out there of what they actually wanted as industrial action. I mean, we've had how many months now of nothing, and you know, suddenly, we've got our delegates working feverishly on a new calendar. And like I said, how does not cleaning platforms, how's that industrial action? So the platform doesn't get cleaned. So what? Who's thinking up these things?
That's a very good example, Alan.
We've had
a good example of how things can turn against the employees, because if you walk onto a platform, you see rubbish everywhere. You don't have much regard for the people that are supposed to be doing that job. I think that's, you know, it's an action that shouldn't have been put up. It doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't further our cause. It doesn't get us any results. They're things, and this is why, if we had a delegates conference with 200 delegates, that opinion could be put forward to counter that. And I'll be honest with you, I'll go to a delegates conference and I'll put something up, and you know what? I might get held down, and I might see some point of view that I didn't see before. And that is important. It's important to realise you're not the be-all and end-all. That's why 200 delegates in the room can say, that's going to work. No, that's not going to work. They can get a group position on it. And what we have at the moment is an ivory tower routine, and it's failing the membership badly.
But this is exactly going back to the stations. I mean, you could have consulted with stations with these gates. What would they have deemed as decisive action? Not pull up something and then realize afterwards that, you may have a bit of a legal problem here, blah, blah, blah. Once again, you put in frontline staff there to be abused, assaulted, whatever. couldn't you just talk to stations? Like I said, you had the downtime. And I'm just baffled at whoever's making these decisions. It just
Well,
doesn't
they could have had the legal advice on the Opal card very early in the piece.
Exactly.
How's this going to? How's the blowback going to affect the union? Is it going to put us in court? Is it going to cost us money? Those are all questions that need to be answered before you put it up.
Well, I think the other thing too about the industrial action is the counter offer that we've put forward. So we're asking people to take another month of industrial action, which is fine, but they're doing it for a very, very meagre outcome. And I think that's another aspect of this industrial action that really needs to be spoken about more, because the counter offer done without consultation with the greater membership, put out, I believe, late on a Friday afternoon, was unsatisfactory. And we're asking our members to take industrial action top down that's going to open them to all sorts of abuse and hardship for a very, very meagre pay rise. Alex has often said that for him, the most important thing is conditions. Well, we've only lost conditions under his secretary's role. The other point is that he said that we're not concerned about pay rises. Of course, we are concerned about pay rises. We've got inflation running at 7%, and their counter offer is a real cut in our wages. So of course we want better, and we want a better counter offer, and then matching industrial action.
I think on that point, Chris, with the counter offer, it was never put to the members before they gave it to the management. It was done so very poorly on a Friday afternoon. You know, we got told about it, and the outrage by the membership was unbelievable. I've never seen the members so angry with the union, and that's heartbreaking that is the position that a lot of members are taking. But it's justified, because if we had a delegates conference where there's 200 delegates, and they said this is going to be the counter offer, it would have got held down. Yous are off your heads. Inflation's at 7.3%. Interest rates are going up. Fuel's up. Power prices are going up. You just can't put that to the members. That would have been my position. I would have said, they're going to get incinerated on that one. I think you want to go back and put a better offer together. So this is why it's important, because to have the delegates at these conferences to give the officials the truth, how the membership are feeling. It's important that we know that as officials, because we can't be disconnected from the members' reality. We must be with the members on everything.
I've actually got, I just found this right now, a screenshot of what the offer is and compared it to the Sydney Train's response to that, I think it was, or the New South, the response to both. Where did I just put it? Okay, maybe I don't. Okay. Sorry, I thought I had it. Sorry, I spoke too soon.
And here's me pumping up your tyres saying you're a technical genius.
I swear I just had it, and maybe it's in a different folder.
Maybe you've got a computer like mine that hides stuff on me.
It did hide it because I found it when I looked into the... Okay, so I'll share the screen. Okay, so it's a photo of the offer. So
yeah, okay. Can you zoom it up a bit or blow it up a bit? Righto, gotcha. Yeah, that's cool.
There we go. They're both crap, in my opinion, anyway.
I agree. Okay. There's a fundamental problem there for us with they keep putting in the federally legislated superannuation rise. I mean, that shouldn't even be on the table. That's disgraceful. That should be rejected outright, because there's no way workers should pay for their superannuation rise. No other workers are doing it. Why should we? It's disgusting that it's even still on the table.
And where's 2021?
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Conveniently forgot a year.
Those percentages are pretty low. Okay, both of these I think exclude the super. Yeah. Get no one-off payment for compensation for 20 and 21, back pay to 2021.
Yeah.
So that way we get the compounding effect.
Well, you got to look at everyone gets paid different rates, you know. So the one size fits all is not acceptable. I don't believe. You know, it's good for the people that are on lower rates of pay, but it's no good for the people that are doing highly skilled jobs, you know. And I did a rough calculation back in May on the anniversary, and I was about $12,000 down because I didn't get a pay rise, you know. So, and I don't chase the overtime. So it's a big difference, you know.
I worked it out a while ago that that at the $3,000 mark is about 90,000 a year. That's the average. Okay, that's where they get that from, which is like the average for all railway workers. That's how they get that number. So that kind of makes sense. But I don't like this whole percentage thing for every pay group, for every work group. I reckon people that earn, you know, $500,000 a year should maybe be getting only a 1% increase. And those earning $30,000 a year getting, you know, 8 or 9.
I'm not sure the people earning $500,000 have actually been in our union. I think they're one of those 355 managers in transport that are getting paid more than $250,000 a year. I think if that was the case, the majority of the members wouldn't be upset if they're on $250,000.
Yeah. So I'll stop that screen. Okay. Same topic area, but completely different subject. Okay. Who would pay the fines if we take unprotected industrial action? So would the union pay it for the workers? Or would we still abide by the rulings from Fair Work if ordered to cease action if you're secretary? Yes.
If I was a secretary, I'd have to take guidance off the delegates and the branch executive in regards to that. I don't believe we'd have to go down that for unprotected, because we have protected action. It's quite rare for unions to do that, and I think if you look at the CFMEU and the MUA, they're the two that come to mind, and they've paid the fines. They're taking a political stance in regards to a lot of those issues, defying the commission. I think it's in our best interest to go with the commission, whatever they have to say. A lot of people have been commenting about how the commission cancelled our industrial relations campaign last enterprise agreement, but they didn't. They suspended it, and there's a bit of a furphy there. There's no reason why we couldn't appeal that. I believe we should have appealed it, and I would be guided by it. I would say taking unprotected industrial action would be the last resort, and you'd have to have a very, very grave situation in regards to that. And I don't believe we're anywhere near that. I think that we would have to work within the guidelines of the law. And that, see, the interpretation of each commissioner might be different. We might pull Sophie Mirabella, who's been put into Fair Work, and obviously her interpretation of the law is, you know, a lot different to those that are probably a lot less moderate, like the commissioners we've had recently, who have been quite even-handed, I would believe, in their judgments. But obviously, if we did have to take unprotected action, then the union would be subject to the fine first. Although I believe there is options for individuals to be fined. I don't know if Fair Work could go down that path. That'd have to be a pretty draconian sort of move. But like I said, it'd be the absolute last resort to take unprotected. You always want to try and work within the framework of the law, because it's better for the outcome, and it gives you a reputation that you're doing the right thing. You know, obviously, you know, further down the track, if we come across an issue that requires, you know, the challenging the commission, there's also the avenue of going to the federal parliament and talking to the Labor minister at the time, and saying these rules need to be changed. You know, and I think they need a good look at. I mean, Tony Burke has indicated that he wants change. I actually sent him an email in regards when the job summit was on, in regards to Dominic Perrottet's threatening to tear up our enterprise agreement, which is still a capability under the Fair Work Act. But he came out the next day. I'm not sure whether it was my email or maybe he got quite a few or a lot of pressure from the union movement, and he indicated to the Commission that, tearing up agreements is going to be repealed, and any sort of judgment along those lines, will be frowned upon, So that obviously deflated Mr. Perrottet's threat to us. And it was an irresponsible threat too, because, as I mentioned before, the state government is the biggest employer in Australia. To have someone at the job summit threatening, to tear up agreements, that's the stuff from 100 years ago. And it doesn't wash. It doesn't wash with the members of any union or any other union. Sorry, what was that?
Transport New South Wales is the biggest employer in New South Wales.
I'm talking about Australia.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, this has been the attitude throughout this enterprise agreement, and that's just, there's it's a wonder we haven't made any headway if you had the likes of these people just saying this in meetings. Elliot was a hard ass to go to any of these enterprise agreements meetings. Trudeau popped up from nowhere and started to bag everybody instead of trying to negotiate the settlement. But every time they came out into the press and they blamed us for it. And every time Alex came out, he stood there and just mumbled about the NIF, which I don't think anybody really cared about. We wanted to know what were we going to do about these people, because they were never negotiating in good faith from the outset. And how can you sit for 18, 19 months with people that couldn't make a decision? Wouldn't you have just asked, where's the representatives from Treasury? They're going to punch a number, so they should have been in that meeting. Not Longland and the likes of, what's the other clown from New South Wales Trains, Alloway, or what? What were they doing? What were they doing in that meeting? They would just say no, and no.
I think Tudor and Co. and the different ministers being involved was had a couple of components to it. It was the component of David Elliott being a threat to the Premier, although that's been negated now because he's gone, more or less. Internal ructions of the Liberal Party, they're in damage control because they're not polling really well. So there was all this sort of vying internally, but there was also, I think, it was a tactic to draw it out. And the only way to sort of stop that is to take some sort of action, decisive action,
exactly.
to bring them to the table, to make them realise that we're not going to cop that. And this is what goes back to my point with Unions New South Wales. As the peak body in New South Wales of the union movement, they should be coordinating all government workers together, united. Yeah. What is being in a union all about? It's collectivism, right? So it's a collectivism within our union. We stick together. We also stick together with other unions, and together we've got, I believe there's 140,000 members in unions in New South Wales that could be utilised. That sort of strength can stop a state, and we saw with the Queen's Memorial Day, the business community whinging and moaning. And I've got no truck with the royal family whatsoever, but they're whinging and moaning about it costing business $2 billion. So if we can have that sort of impact on the business community, and that's where we need to target our actions, because they're the ones that are going to complain to the Premier. It's not going to be anyone else. It's the Premier who has the business community's ear. So if we put pressure on them and they go to Perrottet and say, hey, you might want to cut a deal with them, even though they really don't want wages to go up to match inflation, at the end of the day, they've got to be in business. And if we cause them damage, then maybe there'll be enough pressure put on them. But at the moment, there's none.
Slightly different subject. MOUs. Okay. You've said no more MOUs. An MOU is, for those who don't know, a memorandum of understanding. It's just a contract that describes broad outlines of an agreement between two parties that they've reached. Why is that a problem, especially if consultation is done first?
Okay, well, on that issue, that's the last part of that question, especially if consultation is done first. There was no consultation in regards to the NIF. They've refused point blank to change it back to what it should be. And I don't agree with it. I don't believe the MOU has any sort of legal capability of holding them to account. And if they're talking about getting rid of jobs, I'm of the old school, taking them into the 15-round punch up to get rid of it. You know, if you're gonna lose jobs, you might as well have the fight. By signing an MOU, you're acquiescing to their position, because it mentioned driver only all the time. And I, having read the document, I'm appalled that it was ever signed. It was never put to the membership to discuss it. And this is the big issue. And like, it should have been discussed openly and transparently, and it never was. It was signed, and then there was apparently a roadshow, and I only found out about it in 2020 when a person gave me a copy of it, and I went, "What? What's this?" Now it explains a lot, because it seems to me that there was no real resistance, and I have to say I'm very proud of Rank and File First going out and talking to the members and getting 420 signatures of train crew who did not want to change in the operating model. And that was the consultation the union should have done at the first place. Similar to the counter offer last week, they've got to consult. And I will consult the members before I do anything. I will always consult the members, because then you know you're on solid ground. If you have your members behind you, you're in an unassailable position. And this is why MOUs, to me, a contract, yeah, I got a contract. It's called the Enterprise Agreement. And that's the contract I'm considering. Nothing else. There's no need for MOUs. There's absolutely no need for a deed on the NIF as well, because it has to fit our system of safe working. If it doesn't comply, it's not compliant, it doesn't work. Therefore, go back and fix it until it does. We're wasting exceptional political capital on a deed for the NIF, and we don't need to. We need to go out and get an enterprise agreement up, and we need to get a pay rise for our workers who have struggled with an 18-month wage bridge. So, you know, I don't get this business about MOU being any sort of instrument. We didn't need one for the Waratah, we didn't need one for Tangaras, we didn't need one for Oscars, we didn't need one for K-sets, S-sets. Why do we need one? Make it compliant. Get on with the job. And they don't want to do that. They're trying, and this is the muddying of the waters. They're still trying. They want that driver only because it looks really good to the private operators. And you can bet the private operator is actually having a say in what goes on in the enterprise agreement, because they still want to offload the railway entities to a private operator. That's all the Liberal Party's good for. Hand it over to private capital and watch the conditions go down the tubes for the workers, and the service levels for the public go down the tubes too. You only have to look at Newcastle and Sydney buses to realise that. It's plain as the nose on your face. Once privatisation's in, wages go down, rosters get chopped to pieces, and the service levels for the travelling public go out the door. So that's why I'm against it.
Yeah. Related question, okay. I will add something before I want you to respond, okay. The question is, how would you get out of the existing MOUs without opening the RTBU up to a breach of contract and massive penalties? Now, what I want to add is I did some research when I saw this question, that an MOU is only legally binding if there's a clause in the MOU saying it's legally binding. So I'm not sure if our MOUs that we have are legally binding or not. Okay,
well,
so
I'd have to go over the document, but I'd suggest to you now that if there was any possible penalties, that they would have already gone to court about it, because the train's still sitting in storage, and that's where it will be until they put a guard on it and control the doors with full safe working capabilities. So I don't believe, and is there any more in MOUs? Are there other ones? I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, even at the time, it was doubtful whether it was legally binding on the parties, and some people at head office freely acknowledged that. The other thing is that the MOU, if we read it quite closely, said that all negotiations should be carried out using a Clause 12 type arrangement from the enterprise agreement. Now, of course, the management didn't even follow that part of the MOU. They tried to bypass Clause 12 and extra claims, and the union, to its credit, you've got to be won that case in court, you know.
Yeah.
But now, having won the case in court, Alex goes and gives away the veto rights, the union's veto rights for any future extra claims. So the legal side of it is quite complex. I don't think, as Dave said, we're not going to get in any trouble over the past MOU, but it does set. I guess it's a symbolic document in some ways that creates a certain complacency within the membership that, you know, drive around these perhaps a foregone conclusion, or that the guards role can't exist in its present form, and that's what we've got to.
I got that a lot, you know, probably 3 years ago. Oh, the job's gone, the doors are gone, this, that, and the other. It's all gone. I said, over my dead body. and you know well, Chris, because I used to say to you all the time, guard, guard, guard. It was like a mantra. And I say that the same for every job. Every job deserves to be saved. They have to prove that they're going to get rid of a job with technology, whatever, you know, and they haven't. They've failed miserably in this case. They went overseas to Korea and bought trains off a notoriously poor operator and poor producer, had massive issues in Baltimore and the States and other places, and it's not fit for purpose. It doesn't suit our system of safe working. You know, cameras are a ancillary aid. They are not a primary. The two eyes looking out the door is the best thing you're ever going to see. And I think about that every time I hit a platform and take off from a platform, and how many times I've stopped someone from getting injured. You know, it's unbelievable they ever gone down that way. And I think the management took an MOU to be a green light to steamroll the union. They may have seen it as a sign of weakness or whatever. I don't know. It's hard to work out, but I mean, you just got to say no to them. And you know, in regards to the question, like, could you put the question back up again, Crystal?
How would you get out of existing MOUs without opening the RTBU up to breach of contract?
Breach of contract and massive penalties. I think that's an interesting question, because that implies that there are massive penalties for a breach of contract. Yeah. But I don't believe it's a contract, you know.
Yeah. Well, from the research that I did, and it was very cursory, like I didn't go into too much detail. MOU is halfway between a handshake and an actual contract. Okay. Right. And even a handshake deal is a legally binding deal sometimes. It's
yes.
It's whether they put a clause in there saying that it's legally binding, and then I guess penalties would be whatever a judge determined a penalty to be. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the railways, if they had a legal leg to stand on, they would have taken us to court already over that, you know. I think
my opinion is they tend to shoot themselves in the foot too many times. That we lose their arguments against them.
Yeah.
I would say the union would have as much case to take the management for not following up some of the consultation clauses in the MOU. Like, the union could also take them to court, or could have taken them to court as well. And in fact, they did, about over consultation or the lack of. So in other words, management didn't even follow their own MOU.
But you got to remember that consultation is the sharing of information. That's saying, I'm telling you what's going on, what we believe, this, that, and the other. It doesn't mean agreement. I think some of the management think, well, we consulted with you. That's it. But we didn't agree with you. And there needs to be a pushback on that, you know, massively.
Well, I think that's seriously.
Yeah, that's been the mentality throughout. I mean, whenever something's popped up, they were very quick to point out that, oh yeah, we had consultation with the union. Yeah. And what's that to do with what's like you take those hubs, for example. They had the woman that time that was in charge of safety sent the email to me saying, when I questioned the consultation, she basically forwarded me the email that they sent to the union office. And that was termed as their consultation with the union.
That's
I said, legalities. And that's been the mentality of this Sydney Trains and their management throughout. You know, as you said, Dave, it's a sharing of information. They believe that if I told you that's going to happen, that's their sharing of information.
That's telegraphing their punches.
Yeah,
Well, you've got to be able to give meaningful feedback, and for your feedback, you deserve an equally meaningful response. That's
well, I think they got
that. I believe is the definition actually of consultation. Like when it goes to court, okay, that you have to be able to give feedback, and it has to be considered thoughtfully. Okay, it can't just be dismissed out of hand.
It can't just be a directive. A directive is not consultation.
yeah. I'd like to think that there was consultation, given that Stephen Grantham, the guard at Lithgow, come up with an 83-point risk register. And he said that the train fails, it actually increases the risks. So I believe that was good consultation, but they didn't want to answer that until just recently. And I haven't had a good look at the document, although I spoke with Stephen in regards to it, and he said they didn't address a lot of the issues. So we had consultation, but there's been no agreement.
Yeah. Okay. Craig asked this question: does the last MOU, I believe this is an if one, represent the incumbent's deliberate fraction of the union, pitting one division against the other?
I think I'll hand that over to Chris.
Well, I think it does. It's the locomotive division initially, anyway. Not drivers, by the way, just their leaders, pushing very heavily. Believe it or not, a model called single manning, which is the country model. They pushed it from the beginning. That's what they wanted. They haven't changed. And that, and if that model had gotten up, it would have meant a couple of things. Firstly, the guards would have lost all of their safe working. Secondly, the guards and station staff have been largely ignored in all of this, would have been merged, competing for the same CSG jobs. It's an all-round disaster. I mean, they should have just said from the very beginning, it's driver guard, status quo, as it currently is, with the same operating model, the same nominated locations, stations for station staff, the same repeaters, guards and drivers on every train.
Okay. So this question, it doesn't actually fit. Okay. So I'm going to show what I can, but it's longer than this. Okay. The first sentence, which isn't shown, is they want to offer their experience to date on the Mariong and regional rail projects. Okay. They want to understand what information you have regarding the operating model for the Mariong. That's the NIF. Okay. And would you consider that it actually may be a better way forward for us to work, for us as a workforce to change the way we work currently?
Well, I would say that their proposed operating model, if you look at the wording there, would you consider that it may actually be a better way forward for us to work as a workforce, to change the way we work? I don't have a problem with change as long as it's for the better. But in this instance, and we've got to do a bit of history. I was very lucky. Peter Ferguson uncovered quite a bit of history in regards to the guard. Originally, they had no guard on a train until 1870, and there was a crash down near Wagga where the driver and the fireman were killed because it was a derailment. And there was no one there to help the passengers get off the train, call for help, etc., etc. So they decided then that they would put a guard at the back of the train. And I suspect that there may have even been precedents of that in England. So since 1870, for 152 years, there's been a guard on the train, or a PSS, the CountryLink model. So I don't believe that that means that the proposed operating model is a way forward. It's not a way forward. Change is inevitable with a lot of things, and having cameras is great. That assists you, especially on a curved platform. Like I do that quite a bit on the Oscars. I'll have the front two cars looking at the doors of the Oscar because you're on a slightly curved platform, just to make sure you can see if someone's going to get on. You can't see if someone's going to come out, and they may get trapped in the door. So you have a look to see if the vestibules are clear. And that's just a bit of, having a look at what's going on. But there's no positives in the proposed operating model where the door's shut. You only have to look at what happened to that gentleman at Hurlstone Park in 2019, where the guard wasn't watching the train off the platform, and he reeled into the train and got hit, fell on the rails, hit his head on the rail and later died in hospital. Had that guard been doing his job and watched the train off the platform and gave 2 bells to the driver, that person may have only been injured, mildly injured, whatever. So the proposed operating model is not a change for the better. It's a regressive step. And as we've seen at Hurlstone Park, it will kill people. We only have to look at Kembla Grange, where an exceptional guard did his job, where the driver had spinal injuries and the lead car was derailed and rolled over on its side. He got out, had the power cut, did everything a guard should do. And only recently at Tascott, a guard saved a person's life who tried to take their life under the back of the train on a short platform, went down, administered first aid and saved that person's life, which was, outstanding. And this is the position that the guard's job is. You're there to protect in case you need to. It doesn't happen every day, but you're there to protect in case it's necessary. So I reject the premise of that question because, change is fine. Change is good if we need to change, but only for the better.
If anything, the guard safe working can be improved with better training and with more qualifications, more safe working. That's the way to go.
Yes, I agree. I'm an advocate of practice drives on all modes for guards because currently we're only qualified on Tangaros and VSETs, which, it should be across every, like if I go up the Hunter Valley to Scone and my driver incapacitated, it's 2 and a bit hours up the Scone. I'll tell you now, I'll drive the train. I'll get him to the nearest or her to the nearest platform where I can get an ambulance. But I'm not entitled to do that under the current antiquated operational procedures, which need to be changed for the better and skilled across. Why wouldn't you want to have a person? Most drivers I've talked to would love to have a guard that can drive the train in degraded conditions, in case there's an emergency. And we actually had one up here in Newcastle about, it'd be 5 or 6 years ago. The driver had chest pains, and the guard drove the train a couple of stations up to the ambulance. He only had angina, so he wasn't having a heart attack, but no one knew at the time. They just wanted to get him help, and he was coached afterwards. Coached because he moved the train when he's not qualified to do so. It's a silly situation that we need to change.
Okay, Alex raises something here. Okay, there's another comment I'll show from Dan in a minute. Okay, I'm not ignoring that, Dan. Okay, but I want to stick to the same subject. Okay, should we look at rolling back regional from driver and PSS back to driver and guard? Can they show any real benefits to the current regional model?
Well, that's definitely something we can look at. I mean, that's up to the people that work those trains. We can't just make executive decisions. One of the arguments I put up that the CountryLink model was not acceptable on the NIF is because people book seats and they're there. Like I see people at Maitland all the time sitting there like an hour before the train's due, So there's a cultural difference between the passengers. Whereas inner city people are sometimes commuters running for a train. They might not be going all the way to Sydney. They might only be moving part of the way along the line, So that obviously would something to canvass the membership with and work out what they want, what they believe's capable. Obviously, the new regional fleet, that they're going to probably try and turn it into another fight like the NIF. So we're going to have to resist that as well. But that would be up to the members, for talking to the drivers and the PSSs and the onboarders before we make any decisions like that.
That's for sure. The one point though is that they used to have guards on the XPTs and so forth. They had salaried guards, and unfortunately, so a certain group of workers got redundancies and took it, and probably sold out future generations of guards and their career advancements. The current PSS is qualified in customer service within the rail corridor. The current guards are qualified in rail operations 1, 2, and 3, and I think it's certainly something we should be putting to the PSSs. Do you want these additional qualifications so that you can make your trains even safer than they are now?
Yeah, I'd be interested to find out if there's any data in regards to injuries. You know, and also we've got to consult the drivers as well, because obviously if we want to put a guard on the train, the management will say, well, you don't need to pay the driver extra and all that, you know, and the last thing we want to do is have a pay cut for any worker. We want to push people up, not down.
Yeah.
Okay. From memory, because I've worked on some injury projects, most of the injuries for crew, like for onboarders, are from falls while the train is running. So like walking like down the aisle, and like they'll go over like some points or some rough riding and they'll fall, or something will fall on them, or they'll bump their shoulder or something like that. And for customers, it's the same thing. Okay, so they don't have many injuries like in the gap and stuff like that, like we do.
I think it depends on the platform. I saw a video of an elderly gentleman falling off I believe it's
They don't have the same customer numbers though as we do.
Yeah. But he face planted at Broadmeadow, but the platform, the height difference from the train to the platforms, it's under investigation. I think they're going to try and fix that. But yeah, I'd have to look at all the data before we go anywhere with that.
Yeah. Maitland's really bad too. That's a huge
yes.
Okay.
Well, what you've got, you mentioned rough riding too. You've got operators that outside of Sydney trains. So the ARTC in 2014 budget that Abbott and Hockey put up cut 300 million from their budget. So they've had issues on the Hunter line there with they raised the tracks too much that the Hunter cars were hitting the awning at Maitland, and so there was all sorts of dramas there. I mean, I think it all boils down to getting all the stakeholders in the same room and making a decision that's going to suit everyone, you know. And but you know, if there's a massive amount of passengers getting dragged or anything like that, then obviously we'd have to look at that. But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's a court case on the 30th of November. The ATSB, ONZA, taking New South Wales trains and the ARTC to court over the Wallen derailment. And,
that was mentioned on the ABC in Victoria, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah. So they had a preliminary hearing a couple of weeks ago, but it goes back to court on the 30th, and that's when they're going to decide if they're looking for just if it's going to be what type of trial it's going to be, because it's a company. They have to decide if it's going to be like just going for like money, or if they're going to go for like putting someone in jail. Okay.
Right.
But maybe a benefit of like something like that, okay, is that they'll actually start taking these issues seriously, like rough riding and stuff like that. Okay, I know that wasn't a contributing factor, but that's been a huge issue with ARTC track, especially for the regionals. For years.
I think we, as a union, and that's probably more the national officer's position to go and speak with the transport minister federally, but obviously they've got to fund ARTC a lot better, because if they cut 300 million out of the budget 10 years ago, and they haven't put it back as far as I know, and I talked to Andrew Harris when I was down in Wollongong, and he's a real transport buff, and he said the money hasn't been put back there. So maybe the good that comes out of the Wallen incident investigation is that they need to spend money on the infrastructure. And I think having a Prime Minister who used to be the infrastructure minister in the previous Labor government would help us, hopefully. Because I know going to Scone sometimes, and you're travelling at 140 k's, and the buckle might not be felt by the freight train because it's got so much weight on board, but on a light passenger vehicle, you can be sitting at the back and you're having a cup of tea, and it's like the cup goes all over the place. So you've got to be very careful, because
it's like going past St Mary's. There you go.
Flat chat. Yeah.
Remember the points at St Mary's, how if you're going from that speed before they fix them, and then suddenly you're like, whoa.
Well, yeah. I'll give you an example, a short example. I don't want to go wandering off topic, but we had a speed restriction on between Waratah and Maitland on the down to 40 k's, but there was no speed boards. There was nothing. There was It was all mixed messaging, and this is what worried me. I was talking with my driver, and I said, mate, I'd be very careful, because he took off from Hamilton at track speed, and I said, I think it's, you want to talk to the signaller, because what the paper that I saw said from Hamilton to Maitland, and then we found out it was actually from Warrabrook, which is 2 stops later, to Maitland, but there's still no boards there. That's to me, it means that somewhere along the line the system's not working, and it needs to work better. And unfortunately, in this
That's
instance with
what the
Wallen,
case
we lost a good operator. I mean, John Kennedy, I only had a couple of interactions with him when he was at Central as a Central B depot manager. He was a switched on bloke. He's very across everything, and a decent sort of bloke. When you look back, I used to think, how we had decent managers who used to care about what was going on, that because he had the wealth of experience,
Okay. Now we've got a couple of criticising comments here. Okay, who wants to go first? Dave or Chris? Okay. We'll start with you, Dave. Okay. Why didn't you show up at your depot for the stop work mission readiness safety briefing in December 2020? That was the one that was in the middle of the night. The one that was at midnight. Remember how they shut down for like an hour or two?
Look, I think from memory, and I'd have to, if I had the exact date, I'd be able to consult my diary. But I remember I finished at about 10 p.m. and went home, but I didn't get a text message. I went home and went to bed, and then I got up in the morning at 7 or 8 o'clock, and there was all these missed calls. Where are you and all that? So I wasn't advised, basically. And that, as a delegate, they could have sent me a text. I would have stayed around for sure. But if that's the best they got, good luck to them. I'm quite proud of my record. We were supporting ARTC a few years back when we were at Broadmeadow during the truncation of the line to Newcastle, and I was there and I bought sausages out of my own money to fund the barbecue, because Graham Fozzard rang me up and said, "Oh, do you know a good butcher?" I said, "Yeah, there's one down at Rathmines. I'll go and get." Went and bought $50 worth of sausages and took them along, just so that all the people there could have something to eat, and it was important to. We were talking to the signallers there, and they were a bit despondent because they only got offered 2.5%. I'm very proud of my ability to turn up, but you got to be told. You can't expect it just to come out of telepathy or whatever.
From memory, I believe that one was. My memory's pretty good, so I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. It was
if the question had the exact date,
they didn't get a response from. I remember Alex had a press conference or something at around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And he said if he doesn't get a response by 5, the train won't be running the next day. Okay. And then they didn't get a response, and then they did that. So it was all very fast. It was within 7 or 8 hours. Okay, that this all happened.
And that's good. But if you're going to do something, you should inform your delegates, There should have been a text message, get ready, we're going to do this, do that, whatever, and that's important. We've got the ability to mass communicate with texts, with emails, whatever. But, if my head was hitting the pillow at about 11 o'clock, and I hadn't been told, if I'd got a text message, I would have jumped in the car and gone straight out to work. It's only 25 minutes. So
I remember I was on the phone a lot that night. I don't think I was I wasn't the delegate then, but a lot of people were asking what to do if they were in the middle of the service and stuff like that. So I remember that. Okay.
That's a valid question,
Yeah. Okay. And this one just came in. Okay, and it's for Chris. Okay. It's from Dan Lease. Okay, so we know who that is. Hi, Dan. Okay, Chris, you wanted to red circle current guards in 2019 and create a second-tier class of anyone who came after you. Tell the viewers I'm wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Was I there then? No.
Look, there was all sorts of talk about all sorts of talk about backup plans and so forth at that time. But Dan will know very well, and had some heated arguments within the office about what the safe working qualifications of the guard, or as he refused to use the word guard, he used to always say second person, was. That's what Dan's position was. The red circle position was a position for what was one of the backup options, as I understand it, but certainly wasn't my position. And Dan will know that I sacrificed everything in order to fight for the guards role as it is.
Okay.
I would also say to Dan's question, one other point was when I was in the office, we had this procedure, and Dan will be able to verify this. We went through the OSPs and we worked out what the guard did currently, and then we asked questions based upon that. Now, when I was doing it, my aim in going through the OSPs was to say the guard's role is vital. These roles can't be covered in a driver-only situation. That was my approach. The driver's approach was somewhat different. Their approach was to get a pay rise for the extra workload.
Yeah.
Not to save the guard's role.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from the NIF, okay, because I think that doesn't interest people outside of intercity. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay. Although it should interest all guards, okay, because if it succeeds on intercity as driver only or something similar, it will happen so fast at Sydney trains you won't know what happened. Okay. But here we go. Okay. You talk about transparency, yet the rank and file first Facebook page is locked and requires administrator approval to join. Why?
Well, that's probably my fault, because when I set it up as a private group, I didn't know you couldn't change it later. But, you know, everyone's welcome to apply to join. They're welcome to come on board and say their piece. There's people on the Facebook page that have dissenting views, and there's nothing wrong with that. We encourage it. As long as they're respectful and, you know, don't turn into... We haven't had to eject anyone yet, so that's really good. So that, you know, that was probably me. And as I said before, I'm not technologically that savvy. Had I been given some guidance, I probably would have made it a public group, you know, first off.
Okay, we've got 3 questions left. Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna punch out, but I'll hang in for that 3.
Okay. Actually, this one, not that happy with the language, but it's not swearing, so. Okay. How does Dave plan to follow through on all the ludicrous promises on his flyer without bankrupting the union or getting it deregistered?
Bankrupting the union. That's a good one. Well, what ludicrous promises? I mean, it would have been good if they listed them. What, to re-engage the membership, to get delegates trained up? I don't think that's going to cost us the bank. You know, don't know where that's coming from. And I don't intend to bankrupt the union. I don't intend to run the place like a cake stall into the ground. I intend to give the members better value for money than what they're getting.
When that question came through, I actually responded saying, it'd probably be better to be more specific. This promise costs too much money, but I didn't get a response to that. So
I'd be happy with them to point out whatever it is, you know. Like,
just let me give you some numbers here. As from 2021, the cash equivalent was 11,765,000. Total accumulated funds is 27,849,000. What is a bit of a concern is that our wages went up, remuneration and other employment-related costs went up to almost 4 million for the head office. So I think it'd be a big ask to run the place into the ground with that amount of cash that we're stockpiling, for whatever reason we're stockpiling.
I think we're stockpiling it in case we were, this is just my theory, after 2018, when we got the, when Fair Work said we can't walk out, okay, I think they started saving for, just in case they said that again, so that way we'd have money to pay fines.
Yeah, but
That's
27
my theory.
27 million is
You need a bit of context there, Crystal, because my understanding the maximum fines under the Fair Work Act are around 50,000 for each incident. So you'd have to do a lot of walking out to get anywhere
And
near
other
the
unions
foot.
are
It's
on the fines as
$12,000
well.
for an individual, and I thought it was over $1 million for an organisation. Okay, and that's for each instance. So I don't know if that means for each day or for each person who does it.
But that would go to the question before about unprotected action, and I said that would be the absolute last resort. So, I mean, I can't see that happening. I think there's actually a tide turning against conservatism in general, and you only have to look at what happened in England with Liz Truss. You know, she pretty much blew up Thatcher's neoconservative routine in 45 days by, tax cuts for the rich when there's economic downturn. So I can't see that being an issue for us as a union. As long as we bat smart and within the guidelines of the law, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, but the thing is, Dave, on top of that, the thing is, my concern is, as a non-for-profit organization, why are we carrying so much money?
I don't know. That's a good question, Alan.
We're 14,000 members and we got 27 million around. And you tell me, when was the last time that we took unprotected action? So what's the stockpile for?
That's a good question.
If people want to know the answer, they should be asking. They should be emailing the union. Actually find out what that money is there for.
But how should we spend on lawyers this year?
And 4 million on wages for a small union. I think that's a lot of money. And the thing is, people should realize that you go to the website of the rock.gov.au or you go to Fair Work, their financials are all there for scrutiny if you want to have a look at it. It's not hidden away or anything. And it's the same like Sydney Train's annual report, which, I've raised this so many times with them. Why do they actually bring this up in the enterprise agreements that we have 2 executives on 530,000, an increase of 61,000 over the COVID years, and yet they deem that 2.53% is good enough for us? Matt Longland is walking around there, yet he got 61,000 as an increase. And
that's definitely an indication of the class position within Transport for New South Wales.
No, but
it's okay to give department secretaries 12%, but at 3%, the best you're going to get.
And here again, I go to the media when Classens and companies front in the media. Why isn't this brought up? I agree. These are the things that people need to know. They don't want to know about the NIF. Tell them about what Transport is spending on managers in Sydney Trains alone.
Yeah, this is what I would prosecute as the secretary. I'd be saying, hang on a second. The people that have kept the state going for the last 2.5 years during the pandemic, bushfires and floods, they deserve recognition for putting in, and a lot of people got COVID on the job, unbelievable. And it's a slap in the face from the Paratech government and transport bureaucracy that they don't get recognised for that. But they don't care about that. And there's this disconnect. I noticed yesterday when aged care people got 15% pay rise. Very low paid workforce, but they deserve it. Of course they deserve it. Every worker deserves it. All workers deserve it. I tell you who doesn't deserve it: the CEOs of corporations and the bureaucracy of Transport for New South Wales. Because you look at what's happened in New South Wales when it comes to transport. They've failed on every level. The only thing that Liberal Party and Transport has delivered is toll roads. That's it. Nothing else. They've delivered nothing but toll roads. So that how can they get $61,000 bloody pay rises? It's disgusting. And that should be our argument, big time.
Yeah, that should be the argument. I mean, and they've got to prove that that whoever got that, a person like Matt Longland is on 530,000 and he can't make a decision in a enterprise agreement. Then what's he doing there? He's walking around now going to say, you saw the latest now. He's down there at Lavender Bay with the MP. What's that all about? Yeah,
he's there to make the call to shut us down when we do an overtime ban.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and lock us
anyway,
out.
Listen here, let me thank everybody. I've got to go. I've got to tend to my.
Thanks for your time, Al.
Yeah, it was good. And to everybody that forwarded their questions, hopefully we put their minds at ease. And thank you, Crystal, for administrating this. And yeah, we should have another chat soon.
Yeah.
Okay, over and out.
Maybe in a week's time.
Thank you.
Okay, roger that.
Crystal, any more questions, mate?
Yeah, 2. Okay. Who is funding your campaign? Who's funding Rank and File First?
Well, largely it's out of my pocket, but other members of Rank and File First have contributed. There's no external funding at all.
Okay. And the last question, and this didn't really fit into any subject area, and it doesn't fit. So I'm going to read it, okay? And it says, as you may be aware, the RTBU has organised and implemented various campaigns, including stickers and posters, including several misleading "This bus stop has closed" flyers, both on trains and buses. Do you rank and file people support or oppose these campaigns of vandalism instead of buying ad space on already available billboards, TV, radio, or YouTube or social media?
I'd have to see an example of it.
So they're saying, my interpretation of this question is, instead of putting posters everywhere, like on walls and stuff like that, and pretty much creating like a Bill's wall, why don't we just buy ads to tell our side of the story?
Well, the number one thing is advertising costs. And of course, we're a completely voluntary organisation. And, I've spent about possibly $8,000 so far in regards to this. Badges, T-shirts, what I'm wearing for the May Day march that we went on in May. To go to advertising, you're talking lots of money, and I'm not sure if you're going to get bang for your buck on bus shelters. I'd have to see examples of what they're talking about vandalism in regards to that. There may have been a bus. Well, there may have been a campaign. You'd probably have to ask Dave Babineau in the bus division if there was a campaign about bus stops being closed, because I reckon that's a possibility, because I know what happened up in Newcastle. They, about 8 months after they took over Keolis Downer, they rationalised the routes, and there were places where buses didn't go anymore. So maybe that was a sticker campaign that happened, but I'm unaware of it, mate, so I can't really comment on it. If I was given an example of it or shown something, I'm mindful that if a union's going to do something, it'd have to be protected. If you're going to put stickers on things, that it'd have to, because it's generally bus shelters and stuff are owned by councils, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. And so if you start doing that sort of stuff and they have to remove, and then you're imposing a cost on a council, there's a layer of stuff there I really not unaware of, mate, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay, that was our last question. Okay.
Beautiful. Well, it was fun.
Thank you both. Okay, any closing statements or anything before we end the broadcast?
Oh, how many people did we have tune in, just out of curiosity?
Total, or there's 13 people watching right this minute.
Right.
Okay. Let's have a look. Okay.
What was the peak?
I won't get the full analytics until tomorrow.
Okay, no worries. Oh, that's cool.
Okay. It doesn't tell me yet. Okay, but there would have been people, watching and then leaving and then coming back, and
Well, it went on a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah. Okay, but I'll have the full analytics tomorrow. It takes
No
about
worries.
24 hours. Yeah, and it'll tell
Okay.
you, tell me where they were, what device they were watching on, like if they were watching on a TV or on a computer or on a phone. And
Wow. That's
it will also
pretty.
tell me if they were in
Pretty
Sydney or
descriptive.
not in Sydney.
Okay.
Okay, stuff like that. But and gender and age group. Okay.
Wow.
That's what YouTube
Technology,
tells
eh?
you. Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
thank
but
you
the
very much
more
for setting it up,
specific you want to
Crystal.
get, okay, yeah.
No. Look, I'm just curious to see how many people tuned in. You know, like it's good. You know,
Yeah.
it's this sort of technology is something that we can use in the union as well. You know, to get the message out to members and get the discussions going, which is important.
Yeah.
Because it can't all be a one-way street. Well, I don't want to be sitting there telling members how it's going to be. I want to know why and what and how we can fix things and help them. You know, so it's great. Thank you very much for setting it up, Crystal. I know it's a bit of work. Appreciate your help, mate.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
thanks for everyone for turning up on a weekend as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Thank
for
you.
Crystal
I want
for
to thank
doing
everyone
great-
for listening in who participated.
even you,
Yeah,
Dan.
thanks to Alan and you, Yusufono as
Oh,
well.
Dan.
Thanks earlier. Okay. So I'm gonna click end broadcast now, but you two stick around. Okay.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.